America is facing a seismic shift, and to get the stories behind the noise, the media sound bites, social media, and big data, we spoke with a cross-section of Americans in 2020 during the COVID-19 pandemic and the Black Lives Matter movement.
Based on what we heard, if we're to unite this nation, we're going to need to foster change from the bottom up, together. No one is coming to save us.
The really sad thing is, can you imagine being one of those numbers? Like, you wouldn't want to just be a blip. It's just so tragic that you're just swept up into this huge wave of, they died with COVID. Yeah, those numbers are just so astronomically large that I don't think our brains are able to. That's why we needed the Diary of Anne Frank, in order to register the Holocaust and everything. You have to have a story and a person to really feel it and to get it.
My uncle was in Chicago. My aunt lived in Hartford, Connecticut. A week apart, they got the same disease exactly the same way. Both of them went for a dialysis treatment, and both of them caught the disease doing something that was supposed to keep them alive. Any, places where people were going for physical therapy or something else like that, those places were breeding grounds for this disease to take hold. And nobody did anything about that. My aunt was cremated, and we never had a service for her or anything else like that because it was right during the height of the pandemic. With my uncle, my aunt wanted to have a burial. It was 2 weeks before they could actually bury him. And that was because there were so many people who had died. The burial could only have 10 people. And then afterwards, a few other family members were there. What you don't see in that picture are my uncle's grandchildren because many of them couldn't come. In a Black community, the homegoing is a major event in the life and death of every individual. It's emotional. I can usually go and say there's a lot of sadness, but also what's bubbling up in the heart, and I have to manage this very carefully, is a lot of anger. And that comes from the fact that this didn't really have to happen in the way that it happened.
One of my neighbors has become one of those protesters against the virus. He's got 3 young children, but he's like, I'm not wearing masks. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that. And I just was like, how are you going to protect your children? I feel bad for his kids. What kind of compassion are they going to have for other human beings?
We're not doing enough to help each other. I think, the hard part is when you see everything that's happening and how it's going and clearly I get it, the media tends to focus on the worst of things because that's what makes newspapers sell, that's what makes advertising sell. But during a time of a crisis like this, and the division in this country is so bad right now, you would think that would be maybe the one thing that would sort of bring people together. And instead, everybody is in their tribal camps and they've sort of stayed there.
As Americans, we talk a lot about patriotism. The human impact of this virus is very real, and our true patriots have been selfless and sometimes invisible.
It was just unreal because some of the nurses were there when Ebola broke out in New York, and they were like, I was less worried about Ebola than I am about this virus. And I'm like, wow. Because we, equate Ebola with you get it, you die. These people are some of like the most intelligent, physicians I've ever met. And she was just like, I don't know. And it's just like, that's terrifying for, someone who I really respect and know that person and that physician and surgeon had the best training for trauma, and to see internal medicine trauma surgeons, everyone was like, we don't understand how this is happening. We don't know how to get ahead of it. We don't know how to get around it. It was just kind of like everyone's best guess. It was just crazy. And then, they were telling us, okay, as far as like death certificates and stuff like that, don't worry about signing it. We'll figure it out later. It just got really surreal. Actually physically see the extra refrigerated semis of, the extension of our morgue. It was just very haunting to just be like, this is out of control. And I was like, I don't know how to deal with this. It's just, again, unreal is the word that I would use to this.
We're not acknowledging that a lot of the people who are on the front lines are minorities. I hear people once in a while talking about it, but when I talk about a bigger dialogue, it's not on the evening news for a 2-minute segment. This is something that we need to figure out how to sustain that conversation. And then we can come up with solutions on what to do. But if we're not sustaining the conversation, we're not going to have solutions to it.
The essential workers thing is kind of my parents, right? Like, who's cleaning your subway stations? Who's cleaning these offices for you to get back out there in the world? It's my parents. Of all these people that we're probably looked down on because our society measures success based on how much money you make. We relied on so many people like grocery workers and healthcare workers and things like that to really keep our country afloat, and to understand that all the other industries, they might be important as well, but they really they really weren't who we needed at this time for the most support that, as a population we were seeking. Many of them said, stop calling us a hero and start paying us more than minimum wage, right?
I served in the military for 8 years and consider myself to be a very patriotic person. Out on our back deck, we have a flagpole. And generally around this time of year, around Memorial Day, Veterans Day, all kinds of times, I've got the American flag out there. I actually consider myself to be conservative. However, I am so embarrassed at the way that this country has gone that it's difficult for me to put my American flag out now, because to me, it now stands for something totally different. And I hate the fact that I have allowed that to happen, because to me, I was always very proud of the flag and for what it stood for. You see so many countries that did what they were supposed to do, followed the rules of their countries, and now they're in positions where they are coming out of it and coming out of it well. While here, we had started to do a decline, and now we're shooting right back up. And to me, it's like, well, you've obviously done something wrong. Let's talk about it. You went out to all those protests and riots. You went out without masks on. You went out to protest against your local governors because you wanted to be able to go out to restaurants and things like that, or whatever it was they were protesting. It was also the responsibility of the citizens of the country to be able to say, you know what, they're right. I also think it's the president's fault. Embarrassingly enough, I'll admit, I voted for him, and it won't happen again. I can guarantee you that. But it was a responsibility of our government, as it was with any other government around the world, to step in and help out in a pandemic.
Millions of Americans are living with profound fear because they don't work for big corporations that can sustain remote workers indefinitely.
And others have lost their small family storefronts, or they're rebuilding businesses that have taken a lifetime to create.
So my first reaction was survival. What do I need to make it through this time? Because first of all, I don't know how long it's going to be. I absolutely had experiences of anxiety, and fear. And so the first thing was, what do I need to do to be safe in my house? What do I need to do to be able to stay in my home and be safe? Literally the next day I was on the phone. I was one of the people that chose to take some money out of my 401k because I know that first, the stock market was going to be impacted. And two, having that little bit of money, in my bank account would give me a sense of security. I will be able to cover my expenses and then I will be able to breathe.
The unemployment rate's almost 40 million people now. We're never going to capture all the money that was lost. I personally am hurting as a small business owner, but for me, I've lost a year and I am just basically going to just have to hold on for another year and get through it. It's very funny. Business has kind of stopped. And I can honestly say I probably haven't put through sales that I could, and my head's not there right now. We're not trying to sell to each other. Everyone's trying to help each other right now. And yes, I did go through to the SBA, and I've been doing all the PPP loans and everything I can do as a small business owner to make sure that I can stay afloat. And my biggest concern right now is, what if I got sick? Not the fear of getting sick, the fear of, can anybody in my office do what I do? I'm just pulling out every resource I can, and if it's loans, I'll do loans, and I'll just pay them back. But I can do that though, because I've had a history and I credit, but not everybody can.
What about the people who were trying to get a job and now they can't because of the fact that COVID showed up? So do my benefits get continued because of that? So I wrote the mayor yesterday. I actually wrote the governor too or something like that. So I'm just waiting for a response. But the mayor just wrote me back and was like, just call unemployment and dial 1 or something to speak to a live person. But nobody's answering and the mailbox is full. So what happens to people like me?
In fact, we haven't had the space to process our profound sense of loss, such as that graduation we missed, the wedding we postponed, the birth of a grandchild.
While not as profound as the loss of a loved one, we're all mourning in so many ways.
If you're on the edge and your livelihood is, being threatened, or you have to go and work and that puts you at risk, or if you're a doctor and you're a frontline worker, you're not mourning, I don't think, in the same way. You might mourn at the end of the day or in the shower or driving a car, driving your car down the road and all of a sudden you're crying. And because you're so overwhelmed with grief, you get stricken by grief, right? You have moments of being stricken with grief. I think that the kids, teens, tweens, it's the mourning of autonomy. And I think there's also the mourning of companionship. They really miss being with one another. I think there's also the mourning of, at any age, the mourning of safety. 20-somethings, again, they're losing the idea of going and, graduating from college and getting their first job. Instead, they're at home. Or in, say, 30-somethings, they have a biological clock ticking and they may or not have a partner yet. And it's almost like people who are on these real developmental steps, like right when they're ready to take the next step, and they're not able to take that next step, and they don't even know if that next step is really going to exist and when it's going to happen again. So, a sense of like, my calendar's cleared forever.
But through it all, our collective humanity has risen.
Everyone just got so human so fast. Just that our relationships I'm getting kind of teary, meant a lot more than I realized that they did. It can feel like a superficial world, and you just kind of realize at the end of the day that we're all just really truly human, and when we do care about each other. So it's nice. I think we're going to be a lot stronger on the other side of this thing.
There was this travel nurse who's from West Virginia. And, you know, she had a lot of things going on in the background at home, but she came to work and really helped take care of this one patient who just, you know, so much was going on. Like, if this was pre-COVID times, it would have just been better for this patient, but she worked like 45 something days straight. She took maybe one day off. And, you know, there are times, you know, when I was like, okay, we gotta coming into work again. You know, I'm tired, but going to work, knowing that Deborah was going to be there, helping me take care of this sick patient who we adored them and their family, and they've sent us food, to know that she was like, no, I gotta be here. I need to help you guys, and I need to help her. I need to help this patient, and I need to see it through. I would say that was inspiring to me.
I pin all my hopes on my neighbor next door, my friend. We want a different vision.
One of the things that I hope that comes out of this, because then I would say for my uncle and aunt, their deaths will not have been in vain, is that this pause has given everybody a chance to sort of sit back and to think about, okay, when I'm coming out of this, when I have to go back to work, when I have to do whatever I have to do, what good values am I going to sort of take with me?